Good evening and welcome to the regular session of council. It is Thursday, January the 18th, 2024. It is 7:02 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. Remind members of disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Section 3, review of items not listed on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have one item that wasn't able to make it on via addendum because it came in as a late request. It's going to be an item 13.1.2B. It's a request for support from Phil Maurer and Associates regarding a letter of support for their Southwestern Ontario Development Fund application. And the reason it's coming forward tonight is because their application is due before the next council meeting.
Thank you for that. Section 4, announcements. Any announcements from council members? No announcements this evening. Brings us to section 5, presentation. It is my pleasure to welcome Sarah Emmons, and I believe Peter will be joining us online regarding the Long Point Littoral Cell Working Group. So good evening, Sarah. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Ed, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Warden, and Council. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here in BAM today. I've never seen your chambers. It's so fun. I get to drive around the county and see everyone else's chambers. And Pete is here. Thank you. Okay, great. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Emmons, and I am Conservation Director for the Long Point Biosphere Region. And here with me is Peter Zuzek from Zuzek Inc. He has a long working history on the North Shore of Lake Erie. And I'm here today to talk about a funding opportunity. Slide. So the North Shore of Lake Erie and the Long Point Sandspit are world-renowned for their natural and cultural heritage, recreational opportunities, and their blue economy. However, our shoreline faces multiple challenges. Climate change is projected to lead to higher lake levels, along with less ice cover due to this more exposure to the winter storms. And when we talk about all of these challenges that we face along our coast, the correct spatial scale to work in is the littoral cell scale. So a littoral cell is the kind of the functional unit of sediment transport. And it starts at the west end of Elgin County, this Long Point littoral cell, in all along those eroding bluffs. So Port Glasgow and then onwards, all of these eroding bluffs, the sediment gets transported down the coast, and it should be deposited in Long Point, which is this depositional endpoint in the littoral cell. And you know, we have conservation authorities, and I think everyone on council is very familiar with the fact that we manage rivers at the watershed scale. That's the correct, appropriate scale to manage rivers. And we should be addressing these, you know, really large scale problems that we have along the shoreline at the littoral cell spatial scale. So we'll go on to this slide. So going back to the challenges that our shoreline faces, these erosion rates that we're seeing due to this higher lake levels and the less ice cover that we have every year is going to continue to accelerate, and as well as flooding will increase in both frequency and magnitude. This is resulting in the loss of coastal habitat and damage to private property and infrastructure. And I know that BAM Township is very, very familiar with the costs of this erosion. Slide, please. So, in addition to the erosion issues, we also see that Long Point itself is suffering from sand starvation, sediment starvation. The coastal processes that are responsible for the formation and evolution of this sandspit have been altered mostly by our harbor infrastructure in the littoral cell zone and shoreline armoring. And presently, the entire south shore of the sandspit from Cove Road all the way to the tip of Long Point is eroding. And it's resulting in a permanent loss of coastal wetland habitat, as well as impacting recreational beaches and the communities that live there. Slide, please. So individuals who have been concerned about the impacts of coastal erosion, infrastructure threats, and the Disappearing Coastal Wetlands started meeting in the fall of 2023. And I'm pleased to say that BAM has been attending those meetings. In order to reverse the negative trends and the future projections, levels of government and communities need to collaborate on a regional coastal management at the appropriate spatial scale. On December 8th, the term working group was adopted to recognize that this is going to be an ongoing collaboration. And there are now more than 25 members to this group representing municipalities, conservation authorities, NGOs, provincial parks, and the private sector. Slide. On December 15th, the federal government announced funding that was specifically targeted at restoring and protecting coastal areas, especially these areas that are identified as critically important coastal areas. And you can see on the map there on the slide that Long Point has indeed been identified as one of these critically important coastal areas, along with portions of Elgin County. So these funding requests can range from $100,000 all the way up to $6 million. And the applications are due on February 15th. So slide, please. So because we've already been having these meetings and already collaborating with so many different partners, we already have a framework for this submission. It starts on, determining a structure of governance. We've been working on that. And then if a successful application was to be received, we would be conducting some baseline assessment and vulnerability assessments along the coastline, sediment budgets, modeling, the development of a plan. Then we would actually get to take action. And that's something that sets this funding apart from a lot of other funding streams. A lot of times, all you end up with is a plan or a report. And in this case, we'll actually be able to do on-the-ground work, which is really exciting. Next slide, please. This is a draft organizational chart. I'm sorry, the text is a little small due to the number of collaborators that we have on this project. Yeah, there's a lot of people to include and a lot of stakeholders to engage. So I just want to highlight that, as well as the working group, we also would like to be having add a technical advisory committee with geomorphology and engineering experts from at the university or universities, potentially. Yeah, we have a partner, so potentially a specific university, as well as regulatory officers, because a lot of this work involves a lot of different regulatory agencies. So having them sit on the technical advisory committee would be helpful, as well as a public advisory group. It's important that the public voice is heard in this consultation, and that we are able to co-develop solutions with all of the stakeholders. Slide, please. So the scope then of this project would be extensive community engagement and consultation with partners. Again, this vulnerability assessment for roads, infrastructure, and buildings, I think that will be useful to all of the municipal partners that are engaged in this project to have potentially some updated hazard mapping along the shoreline, and to help us better understand how these increased rates of erosion are going to be impacting our infrastructure and the communities as well. Some of the early on the groundwork that can happen is the restoration of beaches and dunes using nature-based solutions, beach building and beach stabilization projects to ensure that the sediment that we do get deposited is set in place. And then, these bigger projects will be the bypassing of sediment at the harbors. And I'm probably going to let Pete talk about that a little bit, maybe more in the question period. Slide, please. So we're here tonight to ask for a letter of support from BAM Township and from all of our working group partners. We've been doing a lot of these presentations, and so far we've been getting all of these letters of support, which is great for the project. Confirming any kind of in-kind staff support would also be helpful and will strengthen the success of this funding application. And again, this is going to be a 4-year project, so there could be, some cash contributions from municipalities. I've already, we understand how cash-strapped municipalities are right now, and so we understand that in-kind is going to be an easier ask. And none of that needs to happen tonight. Tonight would be a letter of support. So I will happily accept questions, and if we want Pete to talk more about the harbor project, we can do that.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to open the floor up to any questions from council members. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was actually very encouraging, and participating a little with you has been an excellent learning experience. So thank you very much. I'm wondering if you've reached out to any community partners at this time.
We were able to reach out to the Long Point Ratepayers Association, and they gave us a letter of support last night. So that was successful. We've begun the community engagement portion.
Deputy Mayor.
That's supplementary. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And as it would, it's specific to BAM, I just wondered if you have reached out at all to Small Craft Harbors or the DFO.
Yes, we have had some contact with DFO and those federal regulatory agencies, and we are currently setting up meetings to have some conversations. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question of clarification. You mentioned that you'd be looking for ideally a letter of support, but there has to be, we don't have to consider in-kind or financial support at this time. But the draft letter includes language around in-kind and financial support. So if you could clarify.
That is from another funding application. So this is an example. So it doesn't, none of the, that's from another funding application. So this is just an example, but certainly I think BAM is already, contributing in kind by attending these meetings. When we talk about in kind, that's in kind. Attending the meetings is in kind. So if that's something that BAM wishes to continue, council wishes to continue doing that, then I feel like that's something that could be included in the letter.
Councilor Froese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the letter. It's a good idea. Let's, and money is awesome. Let's get some money. Is there some ideas of how to stop farmers' fields from washing into the lake? Is there some, or am I asking too far in advance?
No, that's a great question. I'm going to yield to Pete because he is the expert on this.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for taking our presentation tonight. And through the chair, to the question, the one thing that is a really fundamental part of this work that we want to accomplish, first of all, study it carefully, is getting the sediments to move through the system. And if we think about BAM and we think about the Port Burwell jetty, we know it's trapped on the order of 15 million cubic meters of sand. And if we are able to rework those jetties, shorten the west jetty, that allows the sediments to move through the system, and which are now being trapped on the west side. And while we haven't done the necessary technical work right now, the science would point to the fact that if we can get those sediments moving in the system, there's a good chance we could see that the erosion rates on the east side of BAM and Port Burwell would decrease, because we are putting those sediments back in the system. And we feel pretty confident that one of the reasons that the rates are so high right now is that, as Sarah mentioned, that the system, the nearshore environment is sand starved because it's being trapped in the harbors. So by liberating those sediments and letting them flow along the lake, there's a good chance that we can slow down the erosion rate of those bluffs. Now, to be clear, I don't think that would ever stop the erosion. Unfortunately, the erosion of those bluffs is a natural process. That's a natural trend. It's been happening for thousands of years. But we feel pretty confident right now that it is artificially accelerated because of the impacts of the harbors. And our hope would be that a project like this, if we could implement it, would be able to get those sediments moving in a more natural way, and that could slow down the loss of the farm fields.
Did I answer your question, Councillor Pros?
Appreciate it a lot. I do speak English, so some of that stuff is over my head, but thank you very much.
Yeah. Again, any more supplementaries, I'm happy to take them. I think that the point I'm trying to make is that just like a dam and a river, you alter these natural systems, and we have altered the natural system along the lake. And that's one of the reasons we believe that the rates are accelerated, are higher than normal. And so one of the goals with this project would be to try to get those rates down a little bit. And again, I don't think we'd ever be able to suggest we could stop the erosion of the bluffs. But I do think that they're higher than they would be because of these impacts that Sarah highlighted.
Something else maybe to highlight as well is that the funding that we're applying for is specifically targeted at nature-based solutions. So restoring natural sediment flow and using natural means in order to build beaches and stabilize beaches.
Mhm.
It does not offer any money for infrastructure projects, for any kind of like armoring or anything like that. That's not included in a fund like this. So just to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either you, Sarah, or Peter, if successful in getting the access to the funds, I would assume that part of the study or investigation would be looking at both the positive and negative impacts of perhaps removal of that jetty, or shortening that jetty, or altering that jetty, and probably involves a lot of modeling. You know, we do have some infrastructure in the area we are a little concerned with. We want to make sure it's not going anywhere. And of course, I think the only way you can do that is by doing the studies and doing the modeling and trying to suggest what the outcome will be by changing the system, so to speak. Just looking for a confirmation.
Yeah, well, sure, I'll take it through the chair. Yes, there is we're looking at quite a large technical body of work here. So before we rush to any judgments, or before we develop any plans and start creating engineering drawings, there is a substantial amount of technical work that needs to be done. And if we just think about the jetty in Port Burwell, there's quite an extensive amount of technical work that needs to be done there to understand where the infrastructure is now. We were on a field trip in June, and right, your treatment facility there on the west side, so we're well aware of where that is. We're also aware of the ongoing sedimentation problems that you have coming out of the creek, and I think that there's a lot of work to be done to just understand the baseline conditions and how people utilize the area, what they value. And so there's a lot of homework to be done, I think, in short, to work with the community, work with the council, work with the staff from BAM. And that's one of the reasons that Sarah's urging a letter of support, but also highlighting that members of BAM will continue to be involved in this working group, because that is really important for us to be able to show in these letters of support that the municipal staff and elected officials and the members of the community are going to work with us. This is very much a partnership. It's not something we can just do in isolation by ourselves. So all that reassuring, yes, all of that would be done very comprehensively with lots of consultation, very transparent, and along the way, we want to work with everybody to find the solutions.
Well, thank you for that, Peter. Anything else? Well, both Sarah and Peter, thank you for the presentation tonight. I would suggest, in my opinion, the framework that's being proposed is robust. I think there's merit to it, and I think we definitely have to have the science behind it in order to map a route forward. And if we can find a solution to mitigate not only the problems for the biosphere, but also mitigate some of the sedimentation that we're experiencing at the mouth of our harbor, can only lead to good things. So And I didn't see any more hands up for any more comments or questions. So again, thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, that brings us to the motion that the delegation from Sarah Emmons and Pete Zuzik be received for information. Do I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Emerson. And Deputy Mayor Weiser. Too late. I asked.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, just in regards to the receive for information, could we amend that to also include that a letter of support be included?
If that's
I
up to
would,
the mover? Yes. All right. Waiting for our wordsmith.
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor, the motion would read that the delegation from Sarah Emmons and Pete Zuzik be received for information, and that the mayor be directed to provide a letter of support on behalf of the council of the corporation of the municipality of Bayham to support grant applications from the Long Point Littoral Cell Working Group.
That's acceptable to you, Councillor Emerson?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You'll second that, Deputy Mayor?
yes.
All right. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you, Peter.
thank you. Good
Don't
evening.
feel like you have to rush away. Exciting times ahead. Moving on to section 7, we have adoption of the minutes of previous meetings, and that includes the regular council meetings of council held on December the 21st, 2023, and the special meeting of council held January the 9th, 2024. If there are no errors or omissions, I would accept the mover and seconder for the following. That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held December the 21st, 2023, and the minutes of the special meeting held on council held January the 9th, 2024 be approved as presented. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Skips us down to section 11, physical services and emergency services. 11.2, reports to council. We have report BL 0124 by Stephen Miller, bylaw enforcement officer, regarding the 2023 bylaw enforcement annual report. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and through you, worship. Before you is the 2023 bylaw enforcement annual report. In the beginning of 2023, bylaw enforcement was the responsibility of the fire chief, with augmented service being provided by a contractor, being Tenant Security. I just want to thank Chief Baranek for his professionalism and thoroughness. Greatly eased my transition into bylaw enforcement in the municipality of Bayham. Due to the increased regulatory pressure on the fire chief, Chief Baranek no longer had capacity to provide bylaw enforcement services in the municipality of Bayham. In July of 2023, I was hired as the full-time bylaw enforcement officer for the municipality of Bayham, providing bylaw enforcement services under memorandum of understanding between the township of Malahide and the municipality of Bayham. At a high level, the responsibilities of the bylaw enforcement officer include enforcement of municipal bylaws, review and update of existing bylaws, implementation of new bylaws to meet the needs of the community, and drafting policies and procedures related to bylaw enforcement. The overall goal of bylaw enforcement is voluntary compliance with municipal bylaws without resorting to charges being laid in the Ontario Court of Justice. This is achieved by way of effective communication, education, and collaboration with the residents. So complaints on the year, in 2023, the municipality of Bayham Bylaw Enforcement Department received 184 total complaints for bylaw infractions, which is an increase approximately 3% over 2022, which had 175 total complaints. The breakdown of complaints is listed on the attached report on pages 5 through 7. For reference, I have divided the analysis to allow comparison of bylaw enforcement statistics under the previous model, as well as bylaw enforcement under the full-time bylaw enforcement officer. I've done this to highlight the service level increases that have been realized in 2023. Lot maintenance and zoning complaints continue to be, as you can see, noise dominated calls for service in the first half of 2023, as well as traffic and parking related issues. The significance of noise reports can be attributed to an ongoing neighbor dispute within a particular area of the municipality of Bayham. Thanks to largely to the efforts of Chief Baranek, those issues seem to have calmed in the latter half of 2023. Lot maintenance and zoning complaints continue to be a majority of calls for service received. These types of complaints can take a significant amount of time to resolve, as they're fairly complex and it can be difficult to achieve compliance. With lot maintenance, I often say it takes the same amount of time for a property to get clean as it did to get messy, which can be a significant amount of time. Traffic and parking complaints started strong in 2023, but appeared to have dropped off in the latter half of the year. Again, we did have tenant security providing parking enforcement service around the beaches until approximately September 2023. That service had ceased at that time. Increase in levels of service. Please allow me to highlight some service level improvements made in 2023. Again, the analysis is divided into the first half of 2023 and the latter half of 2023. These statistics, for your reference, are listed on page 4 of the attached report. In 2023, we saw a dramatic increase in complaint response times. In the first half of 2023, we only responded to approximately 30% of calls for service within 5 business days. That is a generally accepted reasonable time frame for response within bylaw enforcement. In the latter half of 2023, that number increased to 73% of calls for service being responded within 5 days of being received, with the median number of days to response from complaint received to someone actually going out and investigating being 2 days on the year. We also saw the median number of days from initial action to resolution of a complaint decreased by approximately 50%, from 14 days down to 7. That means basically we're resolving complaints 50% quicker, which is very positive. We also saw a significant improvement in the number of complaints carried over from the previous year. In 2022, and this is not included in the total number, we saw 97 total complaints carried over from 2022 into 2023. From 2023 into 2024, I am pleased to advise we are carrying over only 13 total investigations. That's a decrease of 86%. What happens when we carry complaints over into the next year is that it just adds to our workload. They compound and they pile up, and then before you know it, you can't get to much because you're trying to clean up from the previous year. Response methods. There are several tools in the bylaw enforcement officer's tool belt in terms of achieving compliance. Documentation and interpersonal communication are effective and are key in explaining bylaws and how they apply. Sometimes charges may be necessary if attempts to achieve voluntary compliance are unsuccessful. I'm pleased to advise that no charges were required to be issued in 2023 in terms of achieving compliance. There was one property standards order that was required to be issued based on the circumstances associated with the investigation. I am pleased to advise though that that order has been confirmed to have been complied with. So no further action necessary. Value-added services, as previously stated, the bylaw enforcement officer not only has an extensive background in bylaw enforcement, but is also a licensed paralegal with a prosecutorial background and extensive experience drafting and implementing bylaws. In 2023, I began liaising with the Ministry of the Attorney General's Office, as well as the Regional Senior Justice of the Peace, to get set fines approved for new bylaws. This historically was undertaken by Elgin County Legal, And this additional value stands to decrease the amount spent on external legal services. I've further been collaborating with the chief building official and the deputy chief building official on files that require preliminary investigation. This saves valuable building time. So if there's an issue, the CBO, Mr. Sutherland, can send me out. I'll check into it and report back to him, and he can determine whether it requires his attention. In conclusion, 2023 has been a year of change as it relates to bylaw enforcement in the municipality of Bayham. It's been busy, but I believe statistics listed within this report underscore the significant service level improvements that have been achieved, as well as the necessity for a dedicated bylaw enforcement officer within the municipality of Bayham, given on the increase of complaints. In 2024, the municipality of Bayham looks forward to ongoing collaboration with the township of Malahide under a successful shared servicing arrangement. Bylaw will also be investigating creative opportunities for future revenue generation, including the possibility of paid parking towards the beach without the need for front-end capital investment required through pay stations and similar infrastructure. Thank you. Subject to any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for that report, Stephen. Does anyone have any questions? Deputy Mayor? If we can get through the questions quickly, or we will have to suspend and go to a public meeting. Councilor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More of a comment or maybe an ask. In one of our previous reports, there was a Malahide numbers were next to ours. And on your next report, I would appreciate if you could have Malahide numbers next to ours, just because we're similar in population, and just to compare to see how we are doing as a lovely Bayham.
Thank you. And through the chair, I can provide Malahide's numbers in terms of matters that I've touched on. The breakdown is 101 since I started to 60.
Or where?
Total complaints. So 101 being Bayham, 60 in Malahide that I've investigated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything additional? Okay, again, thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, members of council.
Let's discharge this issue and then close for a public meeting. The motion would read that report BL 0124 by 2020 regarding the 2023 bylaw enforcement annual report be received for information. I need a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Chilcott will move. Councillor Froze will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We will now recess our regular session in order to go to a public meeting. Okay. Now call the statutory planning meeting to order. It's at 7:35 p.m. I would remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none noted. The purpose of the proposed amendment is we're dealing with proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 1323, 11593 Plank Road, McOnley. I hope I pronounced that properly. The purpose of the bylaw is to rezone the subject property from Hamlet Commercial Zone to Hamlet Residential Zone to permit and recognize the existing standalone residential dwelling not supported by a commercial use. The subject property is known as 11593 Plank Road, west side and north of Eden Line in the Hamlet of Eden. The effect of the bylaw will be to permit and recognize the continued use of the existing standalone residential dwelling not supported by commercial use. At this time, I'll ask for any public participation. Anyone wishing to speak to this particular zoning matter? Please attend the podium. Okay, seeing none. Is there any correspondence with this file, Mark?
Through your worship to council, there's no correspondence.
All right, and I note that there is no other business. Which brings us to the adjournment. So the motion reads that the zoning bylaw amendment be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the planning act requirements, the public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 1323 is now complete at 7:37 PM. Do I have a mover and seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Weiser. Seconded by Councillor Froze. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll now return to our regular schedule. We left off at section 12, Development Services, Sustainability and Conservation. I guess it's 12.1 corresponds to receive for information. Item A, notice of public meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 1323, how do you pronounce that one, Mark? Macaloni. Thank you. My apologies. Any questions? Is that
To receive.
to receive? Thank you. Seconder? Counselor Chilcott. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 12.2, reports to council. We have report DR 0124 by Steve Adams, Manager of Public Works, Drainage Superintendent, regarding petition for drainage, the William Redicop Vienna Ridge subdivision. Who's handling that one tonight? You are. Thank you, Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not only playing the part of Miss Elliott tonight, but also Mr. Adams. So the report in front of council is a standard request for petition for drainage. The petition was filed with the clerk on December the 20th, 2023. It was authorized by William Redicop, who is a partner of the Vienna Ridge subdivision development. The location of the drain would be on the east side of North Street between King and Chapel. The subdivision site plan is required to have a legal outlet to drain the proposed subdivision lots. This would be a new municipal drain that pending site meeting would run directly into the Big Otter under Plank Road. After the site meeting, it would be more than likely to be constructed as a drain down the east side of North Street. So in accordance with how more recent petitions for drainage have been handled by council, staff are recommending retaining Spreet and Associates to complete the full report. And I will leave it with you and council for questions.
And thank you very much for that, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions regarding this petition? Seeing none, the motion reads that report DR 0124 regarding the petition for drainage for William Redicott, Vienna Ridge subdivision be received, and that the council of the corporation of the municipality of Bayham acknowledges the filing with the clerk of the petition for drainage works from William Redicott, and that council wishes to proceed with this matter and appoint Spreet Associates Limited, engineers, to prepare a report on the proposed drainage area pursuant to section 5 and section 8.1 of the Drainage Act for council's consideration. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Chilcott will move. Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item B, report DS 0124 by Scott Sutherland, Chief Building Official regarding Building Services fourth quarter report. Good evening and welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Good evening, your mayor and council. Tonight I have a report. It's quarter four for 2023 and the year end for 2023 for building services. As you're well aware, building services has been quite a year of change this past year. The first half of the year, inspections and building services were provided by a part-time contracted service, with the township of Malahide taking over building services halfway through the year. When the part-time contractor was in place, inspections were provided 3 days of the week. Now that township of Malahide has taken over, inspections are provided every day of the working week. November 1st, we implemented Cloud Permit, which is an e-permitting software in the township here, or sorry, the municipality. Since using cloud permit. There's been 20 permits applied for with only 2 requiring staff to input. So it has been a pretty good uptake on the cloud permit so far. As you can see in the report, the Q4 of 2023 permits were fairly consistent with the beginning of the year. There was 7 new houses applied for, which is a good something good to see, as housing has been down quite significantly for the last little bit. Also in the report, there is a total building permits for 2023. As you can see, permit numbers are quite down. This is likely due to the high interest rates and uncertainty right now. Like I said, 7 new houses in the last quarter of last year, as well as an increase in subdivision development. We're hopefully likely to see more housing this coming year. So the number of permits and construction value were down 30 and 34% from last year. The permit fees collected were down 43%. Like I say, it's likely due to high interest rates and uncertainty in the economy right now, but we're looking forward to this year and an increase in permits, hopefully. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, thank you for that report, Scott. I'll open the floor to any questions for the building official. Okay. Councilor Froese?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, why does it seem like it's been increasingly difficult to get permits since we've joined with Malahide?
I'm not sure. I wasn't aware there was increasingly difficult to get permits. If there's specific addresses or permits, I'd be happy to look into those.
On numerous occasions, I think 5 in Ward 2 alone, I've been called, and it's been very, very difficult for people to try to spend money in Bayham. So I'm a little confused to the point where it seems like the engineers that design these buildings don't know what they're talking about, I guess, is what I'm talking about.
Okay. I'm thinking, Councilor Froese, that perhaps the best advice is if you have some specifics, perhaps bring them forward to staff and have a conversation about it. I don't think we want to air that personal information openly in an open session. Scott, the one thing that I do take away from this, and knowing what's going on in the planning side of things in the municipality, I think you're absolutely right that we're going to see an uptake in building activity in 2024. Just the fact that we've got subdivision agreement in place, and we've got another one that's on its way through the system. Plus, they're looking at a couple of other building opportunities coming while we're starting down the road with the drainage or petition for drainage in Vienna. So I see some uptake coming. So it's encouraging. Given the economic climate that we've had, I'm surprised that we've been as busy as you have been. So that's just a comment from me. Any additional questions or comments on this report?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. The motion reads that report DS 0124 regarding Q4 report be received for information. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councilor Chilcott and Deputy Mayor Weiser, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item C, report DS 0224 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding zoning application ZBA 1123 Shaw and Shipway at 10-465 Plank Road. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So the report before you brings an application back to council's attention. We've already considered a couple of reports before this. We're looking at to be our final report to say that there have been some modifications to the application with the applicant The applicants also provided more information for us in order to consider this application. And at this time, the staff and planner review has resulted in a recommendation for approval of a zoning bylaw amendment.
Mhm.
So in the report, does make reference to past processes and past information that was considered. With this new report, the applicant provided the MDS2 mapping and calculations, and it's been reviewed. They did reduce the number of livestock from the original plan. They're looking at the equivalent of 1.9 nutrient units, which is under the requirement for any nutrient strategy study. Additionally, the applicant provided in the mapping showing that there is a location that is suitable for the construction of the small buildings that they would be housing the livestock in. So there is an area for that to happen. So staff and planner are comfortable with the recommendation to council to look at this as a amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow for livestock on a rural residential parcel. So I leave it with you, your worship, for any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions on this application? Yes, Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps it's not the right place to ask, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Just based on the general location of the house, and I'm not exactly sure where the buildings, the little outbuildings to house the livestock are going to be. I'm just curious as to whether like fencing or just because of the proximity to the road, if anything like that is considered.
Through your worship, as far as I understand, the applicants are going to be fencing in like the pasturing area, which
Okay.
will include those buildings, which it's not going to be free roaming. They will be fenced in. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
And
Okay,
just, sorry, your worship, just to reference the first part of your comment was not sure of the area. The map that's included, the MDS2 map, there are the little blue squares you'll see.
I only see the house.
it's,
It's just the house is blank.
no, it's
Oh,
page
the little-
44,
oh,
the
I
little blue
apologize.
squares.
Those little.
That's the recommended area for
So,
that use. So just to clarify that point.
thank you. So supplementary. So if I may, so that's closer to the ravine than the house, than the road then.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay.
The west of the house, when
Gotcha.
you're looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. Motion reads that report DS 0224 regarding the Sean Shipway rezoning application ZBA 1123 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015. It be pointed out that the public participation meeting held September the 21st, 2023 associated with this application, there were no written submissions and no oral presentation received regarding this matter. And that council considered staff reports DS 5723, DS 6723, and DS 0224, including the additional information provided by the environmental consultant regarding MDS2 mapping and calculations dated December 11th, 2023. And that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution. And that zoning bylaw number Z 456, 2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located in concession North Gore West, Part Lot 20, known municipally as 10-465 Plank Road, from rural residential RR to site-specific rural residential RR-48, to permit the keeping of livestock in addition to all other uses permitted in the rural residential zone. And that zoning bylaw number Z 767, 2024 be presented to council for enactment. Anyone interested in moving and seconding that motion? Councillor Emerson will move and Councillor Froese will second. All in favor? That is passed. Thank you. Item D, report DS 0324 by Margaret Henrill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk regarding official plan Conformity Review 2024, Public Engagement and Community Strategy Options. Martin?
Thank you, Your Worship. And if I could just check with the CAO acting clerk for this evening, we do have Arcadis online. Do we?
Yes, we have Christian and Doug are both on the line.
Thank you. Your Worship, we have two representatives from Arcadis,
Mhm.
planning consultants, as they are the ones that are assisting us in this OP conformity review. And they have provided the memorandum that's attached to my report.
Thank you.
Okay. So as we know, we've had significant changes to planning policy and land use since the last official plan review that was completed in 2019. So here we are at our 5-year review. We are naming it our official plan conformity review because we do have to bring it into conformity with provincial policy, county OP, our own OP. Has to be up to date. So this is where we are. In order to proceed with our official plan conformity review, staff wish to provide information for council's consideration. So the attached memorandum from Arcadis, attached to my report dated January 5, 2024, provides 3 scenarios for public engagement and communication strategies to consider. An important part of this official plan review is public engagement, communication, finding out what our community needs and what they want. So part of that is we want to provide those opportunities in whatever manner council wishes to consider, and that's what's provided to you tonight, is to take a look at what scenarios, what kind of public engagement, what it means, and what we can do to move forward. So in saying that, the memorandum contains all of that information. I'm not going to reiterate that all. It is open for question, but like I said, Arcadis is on the line. If Christian or Douglas, is it? It's on? Okay. If Christian or Douglas, good evening, gentlemen. If either one of you wish to add any more comments at this point, please feel free. Otherwise, we can open up for questions.
Certainly. Thank you, Margaret, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Christian Simonidis. I'm a planner with Arcadis, a consulting planner to the municipality of BAM. I'm also joined by Douglas Stewart this evening, who will certainly provide additional support and clarification should members of council have any questions. So I can certainly provide a bit of an overview in terms of what the intent of this memo is and the intent of this agenda item as it relates to the official plan conformity review project. So again, thank you, Margaret, for the background on the purpose of this agenda item, and I'd like to reiterate that ultimately the purpose of this memo that Arcadis has prepared is to provide the municipality of BAM Council an opportunity to consider both the public engagement and the communication strategy options with respect to the official plan conformity review project. And I guess, in a sense, this is what I like to think of the prerequisite in terms of prior to the launch of the project. So what I can do is I can provide a very high level breakdown in terms of how the memo is structured. So essentially on the second page of the memo, there is the public engagement strategy options. Now the Planning Act does require only one statutory public meeting as part of the official plan review process. However, should council wish to engage the public in addition to the one statutory public meeting requirement, we have listed a number of what we've deemed as supplementary engagement options that they may see that you may deem fit for this project. The next portion of the memo essentially outlines the communication strategy options, and what we mean by that is how are we going to communicate the project details to the members of public as well as other specific interested parties or special interest groups within the municipality. So that portion on page 3 through 4 of the memo sort of lists out those options. And then in terms of the conclusion and recommendation, so The way that we've set this up in sort of making this much more easier for council to follow is providing sort of 3 scenarios or 3 packages, if you will, for how council may wish to approach the public engagement and communications strategy options moving forward. So if you go to the end of the memo, where it outlines the 3 scenarios or 3 quote unquote packages, essentially scenario 1 would just be more so in-person engagement and digital communication, as well as scenario 2, which sort of combines a hybrid approach in that it adds in the newspaper as a form of communication. And then scenario 3 utilizes all options. So certainly you're not restricted to what's provided in each table and each scenario. Certainly if council believes that some should be removed, some should be included, some of these options should be removed or included. Certainly again that is encouraged. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and yes, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that, Christian. Does anyone have any questions, comments? How do you want to shape your public engagement process? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. At the end, once a decision is made, I'm assuming this evening, it's saying that the scope of work, estimated timeline, budget and fees. Do we have a general estimated timeline of when open houses would be starting?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this moment, we don't, again, have a specific timeline, but in terms of estimated, we are hoping more so within around the second quarter of 2024, beginning around there, and early spring, and then in the late fall would be sort of 2 recommended engagement timelines. And I should note too that the first, in terms of what we're recommending and the approach, is that the first, in-person engagement or open house would be essentially, initiating the project at its earliest stages, and really asking, what are the public's thoughts? What are the special interest groups' thoughts with respect to what they want to see as part of this official plan conformity review project, and then following that, and reviewing the written comments, then later within the year, we would provide another opportunity for engagement to present the draft version of the official plan document for then more comments to be received from the public and how they would like to proceed moving forward with that. So I hope that answers.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just curious if what the cost differences would be estimated between each scenario, considering we're on a budget constraint bit.
Is there any difference in the costing between the scenarios? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Through you, Mr.
Go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll let you go ahead first, Margaret. Sorry.
Looking, I guess through your worship, looking at the 3 scenarios, they're very similar. Once you start engaging newspaper or newspaper special events and radio, then your cost of advertising has to be figured into that. Can I estimate that? Not really, I can't.
Right.
But that's where your cost differences will be. The other, comparing them, other than that, they're the same approach, really. So it's getting into that extra costing. And media costing is expensive. I will put that out there, but I can't put a number to it.
Thank you. Comments,
Yes.
questions? Oh, Christian?
Yes, certainly I can add to what Margaret has mentioned, and yeah, I certainly concur with what Margaret has mentioned, and that essentially each scenario in terms of the fees would increase as you add more of the specialized or niche approaches to the communication strategies. Again, looking at scenario 3, By special events, we mean, we would attend and distribute information at, say, for example, the annual Watermelon Festival or Canada Day, for example. So, again, certainly some of these approaches, as you add more, there is additional fees, but again, utilizing communication a strategy medians such as the municipal website that launched, I believe, was it mid or late November, if I recall. So again, utilizing those platforms that already exist, or setting up an email, or just keeping a track of the contact lists of whom wants to be engaged is certainly was a cheaper option relative to, say, the cost of additional media engagement and from the newspaper as well as radio. So
Supplementary, like how,
Counselor Emerson.
how can they be the same if you're gonna have someone has to entertain the virtual open house? There's a cost to that. You guys don't work for free, I don't think, do you? So they can't be the same. And who's handing out the brochures at special events? Right?
Agreed. I think what they were getting at is the more engaged you get, whether it's newspaper ads or special events or advertising the radio, those costs go up. But the difference between, say, the public engagement scenario 1 and scenario 2 is the addition of a virtual open house. So I guess the question you need to ask is, what is the participation rate in your experience of a virtual open house? And is it something that we should be employing or deploying, I should say, in this review? I'll look to Christian or Douglas, what your experience is telling you.
and through you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So so essentially, the way that I've written or provided sort of the understanding what the virtual open house would be is more so supplementary to the in-person open houses. So, for example, say an individual individuals aren't able to attend, on an evening in Port Burwell or wherever the event may occur. Certainly, that would provide an alternative option. In my experience, I mean, it would be very difficult for me to say the numbers, specifically to the municipality of BAM, relative to other municipalities that we've engaged with more in an urban setting. So in terms of absolute numbers or estimates, I wouldn't know for the virtual open houses at this moment. Again, I think what I would like to say is that ultimately, this is the way that I understand and see this for council to consider is that this is the prerequisite of the public engagement and communication strategies prior to the initial launch of the formal project. And what we need to understand is that prior to providing the detailed work plan and scope of work, estimated timelines, specifically, notably the budget and fees, this is the opportunity to essentially guide us in that direction to tailor that work plan essentially.
Okay, thank you for that.
If I may just add some additional comments then through the mayor to the question. Part of the challenge is you certainly want engagement where people feel they're heard and they receive information. Our experience is by going to create a single source of information, the website is a good location with an email that people can comment and provide their input. It might not require the supplementary having another open house beyond the meeting. We put that in as an option to ensure that council felt that their constituents were being heard. We can certainly, again, what we're asking for is some direction so that we can come back with a more explicit plan that includes fees. We can certainly build in one option that should council feel an additional information meeting held virtually is an important aspect, we can certainly give you an estimate of what that could be as an option. However, our experience is by scheduling the meeting, informing people, and making certain good use of your website is the preferred option today. Making use of the old-fashioned approach of put in an ad in a newspaper or such isn't as popular as it was before, where more people are connected, and those other means, as Margaret has explained, can be extremely expensive and require a lot of staff time as well as the consultants. The point we're making here is, how does council feel the official plan information should be exchanged?
Well, thank you for that. Just one piece of clarification for me. As a communications side of it, the idea is to for the municipal website, is that just to advertise a particular meeting, or is that to put out the intentions and then solicit feedback?
Through your worship to council, it's using the website, the official plan page as the communication page. This is where we're at. This is where we're going. These are the meetings coming up. It's to put everything on there as we move through the process.
So it's not meant to list out the particular changes being sought and solicit feedback through an email? Is that, because what I'm trying to differentiate is, are the virtual open houses just an interactive form of using the website and an email?
I would defer that to Christian because I don't have experience with a virtual, we don't have experience
No.
with a virtual meeting. So perhaps they can comment on that part.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the question. So, so essentially, I'll sort of backtrack in that the municipal website would sort of be, in our opinion, the main hub, if you will, for information. So again, as Margaret had stated, is that's where estimated timelines would be, resources to the draft version of the document may be, the email in which you can, send an inquiry to would be on there as well. So really the municipal website is sort of the hub, if you will, for providing all of that information, again, location of where the in-person open houses may be, but excuse me. But essentially what the virtual open houses would be is more so, an engaging, an option that involves more engagement, more of a personal touch to it, if you will, rather than staring at a screen and writing into it and submitting your question to an email. You can certainly have an opportunity to raise your hand or have a Q&A session at the end of, say, a Zoom meeting with respect to the official plan conformity review project. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you for providing that clarity. Deputy
If
Mayor
I
Lashley.
may add another part to it, on the municipal website, we would provide a connection to the provincial policy statement. We would provide a connection to the county official plan. We would provide a point of connection to the official plan as it exists today. Should there be a report it would be on that same place. So it would be the depository of information as from the start of the official plan review to the end of the official plan review. So it's a one-stop place for information, and where there would be a public meeting or an information meeting, we would put a summary on that as well, so that if people want to know its status or what's been spoken to or what hasn't been spoken to, that will be the one stop.
Thank you for that. Now, Deputy Mayor, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments or questions perhaps. I very much support the idea of the website being the hub. I just would like to know what the recommendation is to direct people there. How are we going about making sure they know that's where to go?
I think through your worship, it's gonna be right here. It's
Yeah.
gonna be,
So-
for more information, go to the website, go to the website. Anything that we put out and publish, it will be, go to the website.
Yeah.
Which is what we're trying to do anyway with our brand new website.
Mm-hmm.
We're setting it up so that that is where you go to find out what's going on. So it would just be a continuation of that encouragement to go to the website.
If I may, just a quick point, just to follow Mark's input. So that's currently the way that we use Voyant. I mean, we push people to the website because that's where we publish everything. So we want to make use of the new technology. Through our website also, we do have our new news module, which allows people to subscribe to certain types of news options. So that's another way that they can get information. The third way is there can always be inserts into water, sewer bills and tax bills and that sort of thing, you know, just getting it out by the usual means to make sure we're covering our bases. So we'll be looking into all options when we're looking to, you know, initially establish all of this. Nothing is necessarily off the table, but we will be using Voyant and our news module to push that out as well to the subscribers.
All right, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, supplementary. So under the communication section, it mentions contact list. Is that, am I to understand that, is that what you're referring to? Is that the Voyant and the emails? Like,
No,
no.
I don't
Okay.
think so. I think Douglas is shaking his head.
So what, back to
Yeah.
Mayor, to the councillor, what we would encourage people to do when they contact for information on the official plan review, we would create a master of all of those people. And when brand new information comes out, we would provide it.
Okay,
Thank you so much for that clarification.
You're more than welcome.
And if I may supplementary, just an opinion, scenario one is the recommended, which I fully support. I would also like to personally see some kind of breakdown or component to what the virtual open houses would look like and the costing associated with that.
okay.
If I may reply through the mayor,
Please.
council, our intent here is we gave you a recommendation. It's not static. It is not static. In fact, the official plan review will be very fluid. So what Christian has outlined, our approach is we would make an announcement about the official plan review. We would schedule an in-person meetings to talk about the plan. We would provide background information on the municipal web site. We would start to receive input and comments following that. We think that will be sometime in the spring. We don't want to have public consultation in person during July, August, because obviously that's a vacation time. If council felt after we produce the first version of the plan and we schedule the in-person meeting, and should council feel that it's an important aspect that maybe there needs to be a follow-up meeting virtually, and we can outline what that, it would be just a replication of the same meeting, the in-person one, without us being physically in the space. If council feels that's an appropriate thing, that can be addressed at that time. If after the first version of the plan is produced and there's comments, and our group would then produce what we believe would be the final plan, if council felt that before the statutory meeting, they want an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, they can do that as well. Again, the process is meant to be fluid. The process is meant to respect what council feels is an appropriate consultation with the constituents. It's because remember, this plan is council's plan. This plan reflects what the people are asking for based on the policy perspectives of the province and the county. It's flexible is really what I'm trying to get across. Our recommendation is, and it goes beyond what's required. And from our perspective, we believe it would foster sufficient consultation that when a plan is produced, council can be satisfied that people have been heard.
Okay. That satisfy you, Deputy Mayor? From what my takeaway is, Douglas is suggesting that we could adopt a scenario if we get down the road and feel that we need to include something. There'll be a cost to it, but it could be adopted and put into it. Okay. He's suggesting there's flexibility in the system. All right. Thank you for that, Douglas. Any other questions, concerns? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you very much for the clarification and for being here this evening. I like the idea of the flexibility, and the reason I say that is because, quite honestly, if the concept is to engage the public and we don't really know what their preferred method is, so I would like the flexibility to add the virtual aspect in the event that there are comments that come forward throughout the beginning stages of the process that are saying that they would like that as an option. And then we could revisit that down the road. Like, you know, we haven't really asked the public how they prefer communication, so it's kind of hard to, in my opinion, to do that on their behalf without actually having feedback from the public at this point. So I'd fully support scenario one, but I would just like the option to revisit that if the public is coming forward and with some recommendations. And obviously that's going to be through the engagement through the website and with them sending emails and communicating that to us if they want that option. So and that's just, thank you.
Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. The way I excuse me, the way I understood it, recommendation or scenario one is just what you're asking for. We've got the two items there, and if further down the line we decide we need to add something to it, we have the flexibility to do that at any point. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So then scenario one meets everything we need at this time. So I would,
Kind of. You're assuming that everybody across the municipality is tech savvy and will be watching the website. There are
That's what I
still
said at this
those,
time.
yeah, but there are still those out there who do not. So if you
So
want,
how do
if
we
you wanna,
contact them?
well, there you are. If you wanna be, if you wanna cover it all, you go to scenario 3. I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm just gonna say that there are those who will be engaged and those who choose not to be engaged. And I don't know how you cannot force people to be engaged. But I agree with your reasoning. I'd take or recommend scenario 1 as well. I look to my colleagues as to which direction you want to go.
Move scenario 1.
Well, we've got a mover and seconder. Thank you, gentlemen and Mark. That was easy. The report, the motion reads, a report DS 0324 regarding official plan conformity review 2024 public engagement and community strategy options be received for information. And that staff be directed to proceed with scenario 1. And that Arcadis prepare a detailed work plan outlining the scope of work, estimated timelines, and associated budget fees to formally initiate the official plan conformity review 2024. And I believe that was moved by Councillor Froese and seconded by Councillor Emerson. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We have, moving on to section 13, Finance and Administration, 13.1 correspondence, 13.11 to receive for information. Township of Waynfleet regarding cemetery transfer, abandonment, administration, and management support request. Item B, Township of Alnwick, Haldeman regarding Bill 3 Strong Mayors Building Homes Act. Item C, Town of Aurora regarding community safety and insightful speech. Item D, Township of Conmee regarding municipal election candidates. Item E, Woodstock, Ingersoll, Tillsonburg and Area Association of Realtors regarding the December 2023 housing market update. Item F, the Long Point Region Conservation Authority, December 6th, 2023 meeting minutes. And item G, the Long Point Region Conservation Authority regarding notice of the 2024 budget and levy meeting vote. Does anyone have any questions or wish to make any comment or draw attention to any of these items of correspondence? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. 2 tonight, if we could take a look at A and D. So item A, this is interesting. And I'm gonna ask if maybe CAO Thomas could speak to that a little bit. I know he has a background in cemeteries, but I would be in favor of supporting this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Council. Yes, so in a previous life, I was a cemetery administrator. So this is a problem for rural municipalities across Ontario in that when cemetery boards dissolve or when their volunteers remove themselves or otherwise pass on, the cemeteries default to the municipality in which they're located. This causes a problem because oftentimes cemetery record keeping is spotty if there are records at all. The municipality would have to front capital and maintenance costs if the accounts, care and maintenance fund, et cetera, for the particular cemetery are deficient. This increases the human resources required to administer the cemeteries. And Bayham, for its geographical area, has a very large number of cemeteries. So we currently, I believe, have 12 active, and I want to say we have something like 18 inactive across the municipality that fall on our BAO license, which is a substantial amount. And ultimately, we're responsible for all of those as licensees. And there are others in the municipality that, should their board ultimately dissolve, the default is that they would come to us too. That puts added burden on staff, particularly Lauren as the treasurer and cemetery administrator for Bayham. And it isn't just us, it's municipalities across Ontario. There has been ongoing discussion about how to handle this, and the correspondence from Waynfleet suggests that a change could be that the The default body that would take on a cemetery that becomes, that whose board dissolves would be the province rather than the municipality, because they likely have more resources, and it would, probably be the ministry under which cemeteries generally fall. So that is the crux of the correspondence on that matter. And I would say staff would also support that as well.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And item D?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. This is very similar to structure that came forward a while back, Bill 5. Kind of is a bit of an adjustment, but I still, I am in support of that one as well.
All right. Essentially, those with a criminal record without being expunged should be prohibited from being a candidate in municipal elections and holding office. I would have thought that knowledge of a particular conviction or something would have worked against someone's credibility looking for municipal election. So nonetheless, okay, any other comments? Okay, if I understand correctly, then the motion would read that items 13.1.1A through G be received for information, and that council of the municipality of the corporation of the municipality of Bayham support item A and item D. And you're willing to move that, Deputy
Yes.
Mayor?
Mhm.
Anyone willing to second? Councillor Chilcott? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Brings us to 13.1.2A. Association of Ontario Road Supervisors regarding municipal equipment operator course. Since Steve is not here this evening, are you prepared to speak to this, or is this self-explanatory, Thomas?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the correspondence is fairly comprehensive. Essentially, it outlines that we rely heavily on public works departments, staff to provide services to the municipality. And this is across Ontario. So, maintenance of roads and core infrastructure. There is concern with respect to labor shortages for public works operators. And the suggestion is that at the college level, there could be an established municipal operator course that would develop specific skills that municipalities look for in operators, which would make it easier for individuals to then not only transition into gainful employment, but also for municipalities to backfill retirements and other attrition that they generally experience in public works departments. So the correspondence from AORS provides a motion that council may consider. And with respect to Bayham, it would be to support the Association of Ontario Road Supervisors to develop a municipal equipment operator course. And they're requesting or calling on the province to fully fund this program through their skills development fund. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it with you and council to discuss, but that is the upshot of the correspondence.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Does anyone have any questions? Concerns, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. I actually really liked this report, and I am 100% in favor of this. I know in speaking with our public works operator, that has been a challenge for Bayham over the years, is that when we have really great candidates come forward, they often don't have the requirements to operate the equipment that we have. So it's very difficult I think this is a great idea. So I'm fully in support of this.
All right, thank you for that. Additional comments? Questions? Okay. I need a mover and seconder for that motion. Councillor Chilcott will move. Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? That's carried. Which brings us to 13.1.2B.
Yeah, yes.
which is the request for support from Phil Mauer and Associates Leonard regarding a letter of support for the SWOTF application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this request came in very late today. It is from Phil Mauer and Associates. They're going to apply to the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund. Specifically, they are applying to seek support for a plant expansion to support the installation of a new modernized paint line that will help them stay technologically competitive in the automotive manufacturing industry. They've reached out requesting consideration of a letter of support from the municipality in this regard, as that would carry additional weight for their application. As noted earlier in the meeting, the application is due in on the 24th of January, and our next meeting is February the 1st. So in consideration of that, it was brought forward as time sensitive, and Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it with you and council to consider.
Okay, thank you for that, Thomas. Any questions, concerns, comments? Councillor Chilcott.
Just one. This is very similar to the battery plant where we would be giving our approval for them to go forward to apply for the grant, but it does not state that we're approving the paint line itself.
No, it's just simply support, a letter of support to apply for a, yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
absolutely.
That was correct.
No, if they're doing any kind of building modifications or anything else, they'd have to go through the normal permitting process. My understanding. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I just congratulate Phil Mauer for finding this opportunity, and I fully support it, and I'll move that.
Do you have a motion crafted, Thomas?
I will in about 20 seconds.
We'll time you.
At the correspondence from Phil Mauer and Associates, Inc., letter of support for the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund application be received for information, and that the mayor be directed to provide a letter of support to Phil Mauer and Associates Incorporated in support of their Southwestern Ontario Development Fund application.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Brings us on to 13.2A. Report CAO 0124 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding update to municipal energy plan location action plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is one of our plans that the municipality has on its website. This was originally drafted and presented and approved by council in May of 2018. It is, we'll just call it the municipal energy plan. Council does have this in its strategic plan for review this term of council, and that fits within the ideal timelines for review, which are 5 years. So the plan was drafted 6 years ago and is fully compliant with the Electricities Act. To be specific, it's OREG 50718, which has been repealed and is now Ontario Regulation 2523. Under that regulation, they require the municipality to publish a plan before July the 1st, 2024. This current plan is available on the website. And given that we're just past the 5-year timeline for that, we should be doing a review. And since it fits within the strategic plan, it is the right time to update this plan. The 2018 plan was done by IBI Group, which is now Arcadis. We have reached out to engage Arcadis and speak to them high level about costs for this project. The quote is attached. It's approximately $14,000, and they have provided a high level timeline, which would have the plan done in Q3. Recognizing that the municipality is running a very, very tight budget this year, I wanted to be cognizant that we have the money available for this. The treasurer does advise that we have funds in working capital that can support this project. So recognizing that there is legislation and regulation attached to this, and it is in the municipality strategic plan, wanted to bring it to council early in the year for consideration. Staff recommendation would be to accept the quote and move forward with the review and the update per strat plan.
Thank you for that report, Thomas. Any questions, concerns? Comments?
I just want to, through you, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we have to do that?
Apparently, 25, what'd you say, regulation 2518?
Regulation 2523 requires a 5-year update. There was an update that was done to the appendice in 2019, which means that 2024 is 5 years.
Any additional questions? Really? Something about discretionary funds, right?
Yeah, well, just wanted to make sure we didn't need to spend the money.
I know. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I move the recommendation.
Okay, it's moved by Counselor Froze, seconded by Counselor Emerson. That report CAO 0124 regarding update of the municipal energy plan, local action plan be received for information. And that council accept the quote for an update on the municipality's municipal energy plan, local action plan on the GHG emissions from Arcadis in the quoted amount of 14,000 plus HST, and that the funding for this project be allocated from the working capital. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Brings us to section 14, the bylaws. Bylaw number 2024-002. Being a bylaw to authorize the execution of agreement between the Corporation Municipality of Bayham and the Grand River Conservation Authority for Richmond Community Drinking Water Systems Works. Bylaw number Z767 2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z456 2003 as amended, Shaw and Shipway. Mover and seconder for the following, please. Counselor Emerson, is that questions or movers and seconders? Okay. Counselor Emerson moves. Deputy Mayor Weiser seconds. That bylaw numbers 2024-002 and Z767-2024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? That's carried. Brings us down to unfinished business, of which we have none, and then to other business. I need a mover and seconder for the following: that the council do now rise and enter into an in-camera session at 8:39 p.m. to discuss a confidential item regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual. Administration. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Weisler, Councilor Chilcott, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll take a short break.